been going. So when you're seeing some of these teams just faltering in certain dungeons and certain pulls, it's just kind of a little out of whack as well for some of these teams to watch for. So let's see how they do as game number 1 is ready to get underway. And Perplexed.
All right, so this first pull is already going to be incredibly risky and important for these teams as they're gathering up a lot of this trash. You can see Perplexed going to the right side, while Echo is actually going to the left side, gathering up everything on top of this shard.
Yeah, massive pulls coming out from both teams. Everybody's getting some kind of massive shard pull going on. Gotta watch out here for the affixes as well. Grievous and Spiteful active. So once mobs start dying, we gotta watch out for those Spiteful shades. You can see there's already one on the side of Echo, and they are kiting and using Ring of Peace as this pull is dying. Perplexed also getting to the end of their pull, also using that Ring of Peace. They are spawning their 20% Pride, actually a little bit ahead of when Echo were doing it. Echo sitting at that 19% threshold for a pretty prolonged period here. I wonder if that's the plan. I wonder if they intended to get most of their trash, but not all the way up to the Pride until this pull was all the way done. Whereas Perplexed actually got quite a little bit more trash out of their first pull and have already gotten their Pride down below half while Echo is just getting started on it. So it looks like from the perspective of count and the perspective of speed, Perplexed have sped up a little bit here, but the right-hand side, it's kind of a little easier to group up a bunch of mobs going right than it is going left. So Echo still have that in their future, whereas Perplexed have already exhausted that easier resource for good pulls.
Yeah, so they also managed to mind control that Gargoyle here. On Fragments, he's playing the Venthyr, also Perplexed having the Venthyr on a Shine, so both DKs having that mind control on the Gargoyle available to them. They used it to just finish off that first Pride mob faster, which is very, very smart, because of course the Prides do have a lot of HP and you can't necessarily pull too much on top of it because they're so dangerous. And the Gargoyles are doing single target damage. Fragments going down, unfortunately, for Echo. This is the exact same thing that happened last time. And last time, because Fragments went down, they ended up wiping here. So we'll see what they're doing. Fragments can't actually release. Looks like he's releasing anyway, but they skipped a bunch of trash at the entrance, so I'm not sure how he manages to go past. He does have Shadowmelt available. There we go. They actually battle rest him back up, and now they're just trying to kite out this pull.
Yeah, Azalea using that engineering res. It's so unfortunate when Fragments goes down because he is their instant cast battle res. If he dies, one of the other players is going to have to find his body and channel that engineering res on him. They were able to do that, so this wasn't too costly for them, and they are recovering this pull pretty effectively. But without that battle res, oh my goodness, Azalea gets autoed, it looks like, perhaps by a Spiteful Shade, or maybe a cast went through. Whew, they are recovered, but they are down that crucial battle res resource, and Perplexed are still zipping along. Perplexed slightly ahead on count. They're going to be evened up here as that Obliterator goes down for Echo. They are now both on exactly 43%, but Perplexed have already killed their second Pride. Echo's still working on theirs, so Perplexed, let's see how they're able to handle this big left-hand side pull. A lot of Gargans all coming together here. A lot of pressure on Divine. These mobs really truck the tank. You can see his health bar is under a lot of attack, getting those big Rapture shields to keep him up. Basically, every global from Ryzen is a Rapture shield onto Divine, as the rest of the team now taking a lot of damage too. Spiteful Shades are spawning. They're going to want to kite away, and you can see they're slowly backing away, spawning a Pride back on the other side of the platform, and they are just going to leave those Shades where they are. Ring of Frost is going to come down to basically handle them entirely. Beautiful movement from Perplexed is going to get them a huge amount of trash. Meanwhile, Echo are on this right-hand side pull. This was Perplexed's first pull of the dungeon. Echo are now dealing with it as their third pull. Gingy dropping solo. He's going to be able to stay alive, though.
Yeah, this looks very scary for Echo here as they just finish off those mobs. They use the Ring of Peace to get the Spiteful Shades away from them, but everyone having so many Grievous stacks on them. They're just trying so hard to get those Grievous stacks away from everyone, as now the third Pride spawns for Echo too. Let's see if Zalia can recover the group here, as they also use the Gargoyle that is available to them here. The Stoneborn just being mind controlled by the DK, so they should be fine with this, as the Stoneborn does a huge amount of single target damage, so they should be getting rid of this very quickly. And now Perplexed engaging that first boss. Looks like they're pulling a lot of trash on top of the first boss as well. We do see one CC coming out from Divine Field on one of those oppressors, because those are actually very dangerous for the tank because they have so many casts with those Wicked Bolts. And then on top of that, you also have the Curse that can only be dispelled by the mage in their group. So if too many of those go off, then they can't be dispelled either. And that does a huge amount of damage once they expire as well.
Now all these mobs are dying for Perplexed at right around the same time that Halkias is going to start his Sinlight cast. So you can see they're moving the boss ahead of schedule for that. If they had not moved this boss here, they would be in trouble because they'd be right on top of all those Spiteful Shades without the ability to move further. But they are doing a great job of this, and look at their count, 78%. Meanwhile, Echo doing a similar big pull here. Both teams are going to try and get close. Oh my goodness, Swagfist at 4% HP, saved by the Power Word Shield, is going to be able to keep alive. Both teams here are going to try and get up to that 80-ish%, but slightly below 80% amount. And then what they're going to do is, as the boss is dying, they will be able to actually trigger that 80% pride right at the end of the boss fight by killing off the last trash mob. So you can see there's an Obliterator under the boss for Perplexed that will be getting killed at some point. They may even start this pride while Halkias is still alive, by the looks of it. Echo not opting to do something similar. They have deployed, it looks like, a little bit more single target damage. If you look at the DPS numbers here, Echo have been able to blast this boss and catch up a little bit because they did come into this boss substantially behind, I would say, where Perplexed is, and they are now only about 10% behind on boss HP. They are grabbing in their last trash mob as well that will spawn the 80% pride. Meanwhile, Perplexed are spawning their pride mid-boss fight. This is huge.
And I mean, look at the time. We are 6 minutes into this dungeon. They're already up to 80% trash. This is just insane, the amount of pulls they are doing here in this dungeon. It's very incredible. As you can see, the boss is about to go down for Perplexed. But this pride is just doing so much. It's just causing so much trouble for them as they have to dodge the Sin Blade and also dodge the stun coming out at the very same time. Looks like they're cutting it out a little. They also have the Stoneborn as well. The Mind Control Gargoyle again helping out with the pride. And it looks like Echo might have a very similar plan on their side too.
Yeah, Echo were not cleaving the pride with the boss, so they are just going to have to deal with the entire health bar of this pride. But this safer strategy means that now still has his cheat death available. It costs Divine his last resort doing things this way. So here we go with a skip now from Perplexed, or maybe a trash pull, but I assume this will be a skip. This is usually a spot where we see teams skip most of this trash. Sigil of Misery and Imprison coming out, and then it's going to be the leap. Everybody using their movement abilities to get through, and all the Shadow Melds activated at the same time from Perplexed. They are wasting no time now getting into this Echelon fight, while Echo are still working on that 80% pride, and will soon be getting to the same boss fight. But Perplexed have, I think, sped things up here. The fact they were able to deal with that pride with the last 20% of the first boss have really given them a little bit of an edge here, because that was much more efficient.
Yeah, that was definitely very efficient. Also risky with that Sin Light coming out, but they played it perfectly. Yes. No death so far on their board compared to the one death they had earlier on Echo's side. So definitely Perplexed ahead at this point. Not that far, but it's still very close between those two. But they're definitely playing incredibly clean and until this point. Now, Echelon, there's nothing they can really pull on top here because the door to the next trash doesn't actually open until this boss is dead. So there's nothing they can do here to speed this up other than doing more single target damage, of course. But after this boss, there's going to be a really significant pull again, where they're going to be pulling the whole trash between this boss and the next boss on top of next boss, which means they probably want to hold on to their biggest cooldowns here. So that's why this boss might take a little while longer. It also is, of course, tyrannical, so bosses do have 30% more health. That got nerfed recently from 40% to 30% as well. So all of these bosses dying a little bit faster compared to last cup.
Yeah, now Divine does not have that last resort for this big pull. He does have the cheat death trinket, though, the Splintered Heart of Alar. That is something that he is running that now is not running. So both tanks actually have one cheat death here to protect them from something going really wrong. And I think that should be enough, because this is really the last big pull of the dungeon that's about to get started here for Perplexed. Meanwhile, Echo, they have, again, been just blasting this single target damage. Their Echelon is only 15% behind Perplexed. So Perplexed running through this dungeon here, they are a little bit ahead, but every time we get on one of these bosses, Echo are just deploying so much damage, and they are clawing their way back into this. 5 extra seconds as well as a result of that death against Echo. So far, a flawless run from Perplexed. No deaths as they are getting on to this third boss. All the trash leading up to her as well is coming at the same time. This is going to be Divine's meta. There's the pain suppression on him as well, but huge damage is coming out. Oh no!
Yeah, this is going to be
He's,
dangerous for them, as he also doesn't have any last resort left, right? So Divine Field definitely needs to be careful to not go down here as they're gathering up everything. And not only that, not only does he have to survive the mobs, but then also the spiteful shades coming out of all of these trash mobs that they pulled. You see how incredibly low Divine Field is dropping here, but did manage to recover as they're now kiting all the spiteful shades into that Ring of Peace. And also the Ring of Frost coming out of Wolf Disco as well on that mage, making sure they use all the utility available to them to just get rid of those shades. And Echo also on the boss, and you can see how close it is between them, between those two, as Echo seemed to be having a little bit more single target damage on most bosses so far. So there's definitely still a chance for them to catch up, as you can see the boss just melting for them.
Yeah, I mean, this boss is almost at the same health amount. What Echo is doing is it looks like they're just focusing more on boss damage and less on the big AoE cleave. They're just letting all that cleave happen incidentally, whereas Perplexed are focusing a little bit more on taking care of those trash mobs and managing them. Echo's just saying, look, the thing that is slowing us down is when this boss dies. We don't care whether the trash dies when the boss is at 70% or when the boss is at 60%. Or when the boss is at 50%. None of that is going to make a difference for us as long as we can stay alive, which we can. Perplexed, on the other hand, deciding to instead focus a little bit more on that cleave. Although now, with their cooldowns back up, the fact that they don't have any trash to deal with, they are pulling ahead a little bit on this boss. They're up to 20% difference now between the two bosses' HPs.
Yeah, looks like they're getting closer and closer to get to that next boss room where they have the mini boss that they have to deal with. They're most definitely gonna ignore the neutral mobs and just trying to nuke the boss in between the Dark Communions, which is basically the heal to full if the neutral mobs are still alive. So they just try to get enough single target damage to be able to finish the mini boss off before that second cast comes out. And we've seen some teams struggle with that because it's just like big pull into big pull into big pull. So they're running out of cooldowns at some point, right? So if they don't have enough damage for this Cigar, for this mini boss, then that's going to cause a huge disaster because then all of a sudden they might have to use more than they wanted to, and they're also going to be losing a lot of time. So let's see if they have enough damage here on Perplexed side as they're already fighting the mini boss.
Yeah, they are 20 seconds ahead by my count, including those 5 seconds of the death. They are getting started on the mini-boss and, yeah, trying to burst it down before that next Dark Communion cast. They are well ahead of schedule here. They should be just fine. They are committing a couple of their offensive cooldowns here. Power Infusion used, a couple of other things. Let's see if they're able to skip this Pride successfully or if they choose to just fight it. Looks like they are just going to choose to fight it. So they're not going to try and fire off the Invis potions. I guess maybe those are still on cooldown from a point earlier, or maybe they decide maybe they're just going to take this into boss at some point as well. That's something that is potentially an option for them. Anti-magic zone coming out here. Divine sort of backing up towards the boss. Echo on a similar sort of plan here. They are pulling this Pride down into this room, and yes, Divine is going into boss. So boss is being pulled here. They know that they have to go as much damage as they can, but this is really dangerous because the Pride ramps up in damage. At this point in the fight, the Pride is doing so much damage to the entire group. This boss doesn't do too much damage, but they do need to make sure they get this Pride down before stuff gets too dangerous, while also dodging all of those statues that is being thrown at them. They've done it, but Echo have also pulled onto boss. Echo are starting the same fight, and their boss is only a couple of percentage points
Zalia's
behind
mana.
where Perplexed is, but Zalia's mana and health are both so low, they have to kill that Pride. Once they do that, they get that mana and a bunch of extra healing, and you can see Zalia's mana is completely recovered now. Echo, he's not even worried about it, though. He's not even going to try and top everybody. He's just going to let those atonements passively heal everybody, because there's no damage that comes out, assuming you dodge those statues. So the atonements will be enough to keep up the Grievous on both himself and Fragments, and he's just focusing on blasting that boss damage. That's a really heads-up play. It's so easy as a healer to be scared of somebody on low health in your group, but if you have the awareness of what the damage sources are, and you trust your teammates to not take any avoidable damage, you can leave them on 30% health, even with Grievous active. They've got that atonement on them. You can just focus on that boss damage, and that's what Zalia is doing here to try and keep this close. They have to overtake Perplexed, not just kill the boss sooner, they have to kill it 5 seconds sooner, and Perplexed is doing such massive damage, I'm not sure this is going to be possible.
This is just incredible how fast those two teams are. I mean, the fastest hauls we have seen this tournament was 16:41. And
so there's
this
the
is
lust.
just...
It's
Yeah, the
expired now
Bloodlust
for
already
both
came
teams.
out. The Bloodlust already happened for both of those. And Perplexed is just gonna... They're gonna be making it, right? The boss already on 10%. We do see the combustion coming out of Dr. Wolf Disco again. And the boss is gonna die here. They're gonna be winning the first game against Echo. And look at their run. I mean, look at the time. 14 minutes and 20 seconds in this dungeon. What an incredible run by Perplexed. Wow.
Oh my goodness, Perplexed
Oh my
starting
God.
off the series with a statement here as they take game number 1 from Echo and Halls of Atonement there. And yeah, I love what you brought up there, Tranos, in the end. You know, you wanted to see Xaylia pumping out as much damage as he could. He was really trying to do everything he could to kind of bait out more Twist of Fate uptime to get that 20% damage and healing bonus by letting his allies stay a little bit lower, but it just wasn't enough. It's Perplexed putting on a crazy phenomenal run there, Zyro, taking game number 1.
Yeah, man, if you're Echo at the end of that game, when you have the boss at 10% HP on a relatively clean run, like 14:30 on the timer, and you see that message in your party chat, the other team has won, there just got to be question marks going off. Like, how good is Perplexed actually? These guys are nuts, man. We were talking about this yesterday. Like, Echo's fastest time in practice in Halls of Atonement was, I believe, a 14:30 or so, and Perplexed just crushed that.
Yeah, no question. It was just all Perplexed, it seemed to be. And let's start taking into the replay. Was there just some point there, Zyro, they started pulling ahead? What was the difference?
Yeah, I mean, a majority of the time difference for Perplexed was just how they pulled the start of the dungeon here. In particular, these two shard pulls, the second and third shard pulls, they just pulled a little bit extra trash, which meant that when they ended up pulling trash into the first boss, Halkias, they didn't have as big of a pull to deal with. So it was a lot easier for them to burst through that AoE and get extra boss damage in. And after the first boss, they were securely in the lead. This pull in particular, this got them from 43 to 66% trash, just bursting through it like it's nothing here. Yeah, of course, they drop a little bit low because they're all in melee range for the Thrash, but that's nothing Ryzen can't deal with there, especially with the 80k burst AoE coming out of Dr. Wolf Disco there. Just nuts how clean these guys are with their execution. Again, another 0 death run from Perplexed.
Yeah, and they have absolutely shown how well they've developed really over, you know, such a long period of time. You mentioned it before, Zyro, that, you know, they had won the last cup of the BFA MDI season, for example, and they kind of just continue with this momentum in a lot of cases as well, Nagura.
Yeah, I mean, this is just incredible. I mean, seeing how close those two teams are. And I mean, in the past, it usually was just Echo doing those incredible runs, those insane routes, and those fast times that no one else could really compete with. Perplexed always came really close, but in the end, it was still always Echo who just had a little bit of a faster run, a little bit of a better strategy. And then at the very last cup, they actually won against Echo. And now they're just continuing this trend, just doing very, very similar strategies to Echo, but just slightly faster and executing it slightly better. And that's just incredible to see between those two teams.
Yeah, it really is. And that's also going to bring us into game number 2. So we're going to be going into the Necrotic Wake. And we had already seen like a 14:25, 14:30 minute run at a Necrotic Wake on the side of Echo here as well, Drano. So we know that they can absolutely blast this dungeon.
Yeah, and the run from Perplexed in this dungeon, we've also seen it was substantially slower.
17. Yeah, it was almost 17 minutes.
But that was because their first pull ended in near disaster. Divine was able to solo the last 2% of the first boss's health to prevent it from being a total disaster, and they had a very close win against Does Gargoyle Stream, who also had a bunch of stuff go wrong in their run. But we're really going to be looking for Perplexed here to clean this one up, to show another beautiful run like we just saw out of Halls of Atonement. You know, Halls of Atonement, that was a dungeon where Echo had problems earlier. Perplexed took that win here. Echo are really going to be looking to come in to Necrotic Wake, where Perplexed have had problems earlier, and similarly even things up, and then we get to go to that tiebreak in Game 3.
That's right, and it very well could get to that point. And just kind of showing, you know, when those teams are having problems, we get that second chance, that second opportunity to look at how they're going to be improving upon it. And something like the Necrotic Wake, I think, in a lot of respects there, Zyro, we started talking about some of the momentum dungeons like Sanguine Depths, but even Necrotic Wake as well just has so much pressure on these teams to make sure they're getting it right the first time. So if you make mistakes, it just throws everything else off kilter.
Yeah, I mean, if you use your weapons and you wipe on a bull, that's it. That's all she wrote. You don't get to complete the dungeon in any meaningful time whatsoever. So this is a very much one and done dungeon. If you're able to pull off the pulls, great. If you mess up, we'll see you in the next match.
That's right. Game is ready to get going as Echo is right now down 1 versus Perplexed in our upper finals as we go into the Necrotic Wake.
All right, from one explosive dungeon into the next. This is also going to be an incredible quick run if they're going to be playing those pulls perfectly, if they're not going to have any sort of mistakes, especially on the very first pull where they pulled basically the whole first area into the boss. So we'll see how they're going to be doing against this. And let's be honest here, they really didn't have a lot of time to recover from that first Halls run where you just go big pull into big pull into big pull, and now they had like 2 minutes of a break, and now they already have to play this dungeon, have to play the different affixes, have to play the different classes as well, because we're probably going to be seeing rogues here for those weapons.
Yeah, this can be such a tricky dungeon when it's not your first of the series, because you have to just come into it and do these massive pulls, but you can't have just been practicing them. As we see, both teams are now getting into this massive first pull onto first boss. Affix is active as well, or Spiteful and Volcanic, so they've got a lot of dodging to do. We're going to see all this. Oh my goodness, Divine at 4% is going to be kept alive without having to commit either cheat death, is going to use his Metamorphosis instead, and both teams are going to be spawning their Pride here and then kiting away from all these Spiteful Shades. Again, much like last dungeon, we have that Spiteful, so we're seeing those Rings of Peace coming out from the monks to keep the Spiteful Shades far away as they move the boss to where they want to go next. Both teams activating their Goliaths at exactly the same time. Synchronized Goliath activations between these two teams. Look at that animation. Beautiful, beautiful timing from both teams here, as Blightbone is slightly lower for Perplexed. They are going to use one of those hammers on the side of Echo to stun the Manifestation of Pride, get that thing killed. On the side of Perplexed, the Manifestation is being cleaved down rather than being focused, and this means that their boss was a little bit lower, but now Echo are catching up on that boss damage, and they don't even have a Pride to still deal with. Goes down for Perplexed, and these two teams are neck and neck.
Yeah, this is so close between those two teams, and you have to note how close they also stand together, because they are using the pulsing AoE heal and also pulsing AoE damage that those orbs do from the Goliath that they repaired with the Kyrian Steward. So that's why they're standing on top of each other. That's what makes this pull even possible, to be able to have the Pride on top of the boss, only possible because to get this extra heal from that pulsing AoE. And now we do see Zalia on Echo's side, also activating this second Goliath here to get another refresh of this buff. Just really, really using these weapons perfectly in this dungeon. As Perplexed is doing something similar, but it takes them a little while longer to do their setup here, as we did see Ashine stealth through, picking up the orb, and now they're gathering their pull.
Yeah, 6 seconds difference between these teams on the first boss timer. I would say that Perplexed actually have clawed back a little bit of that time as they start this pull, but Divine is dropping really, really low. You want to preserve those cheat death effects as much as you can in this dungeon, because so much of the rest of this dungeon is so dangerous, and they've done a good job of doing that here. It wouldn't have been the end of the world if it had procced his Last Resort, but they've managed to prevent that from happening, and that is really good news. As Perplexed are spawning their 40% Pride actually ahead of Echo here. Echo still have that mini-boss to work on. Perplexed have done a really good job of just dumping damage into all these monsters and getting this Pride ahead of schedule. And they're actually, I would say, a little bit ahead here, but they've pulled a different combination of enemies. They actually, it looks like, have just skipped that pull in front of the bridge, whereas Echo have killed it. So Echo a little bit ahead on count compared to where Perplexed are. Perplexed have found a smaller combination of enemies to get to that 40%, and that means they are going to need to skip this pull here. They're going to do it with Mind Soothe from Ryson. So Mind Soothe comes out to let them run past that mini-boss, and they are going to move on to their next big pull here, but they are going to need to find a little bit more count in the rest of this dungeon than Echo will. Even though Echo are a little bit later to start getting across this bridge, they do need 4% less. Perplexed going into this next big pull. Ashine is going to commit that powerful weapon. Oh no, Swag goes down though for Perplexed. This is really rough. Swag isn't all their damage, but they now need to be so careful as they continue to kite here. Oh no, Divine is dead.
It almost looks like they were trying to maybe think about resetting the pull, because Ashine was just holding on to his orb for so long, and then they decided to go in anyway. But then as soon as Ashine activated his orb, Divine went down and they got him back up. But this is just a full reset for them, unfortunately, and things just didn't quite go down either. Look at how low this monstrosity is as it's gonna reset here. This is a huge disaster for Perplexed, as Echo was doing this very same pull, but it worked out for them.
Oh no!
It's pulling the mini boss as well.
It's the mini boss is getting pulled. They're gonna try and get that last little bit of count from the mini boss here. So Divine is gonna go on a mission here. He's gonna try and kill this monstrosity before it kills him. He's able to do it, so they are gonna be able to secure that count. But now they have to do a full wipe again. They have to actually make sure they drop combat with everything, because when they released, they got back in combat, which was caused them problems before. So they're hoping to be able to do that, but that has spawned them their pride now. That kill has spawned their 60% pride, with which they are probably in combat. We'll see if they are. This is so rough for Perplexed, and Echo, meanwhile, are sitting on a 0 death run. They've executed their pull cleanly. They're at 68%. They have that pride buff going into the second boss. Perplexed need things to go horribly wrong for Echo to catch back up here, because Perplexed they're just in so much trouble now.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it looks like they did manage to get some trash down. As you can see, they're 61%, so some of the trash did die to the orb AoE that Shine managed to do with his weapon, but it's still just a huge disadvantage, of course. And you see how important all of the members are here. Even if maybe the Windwalker is not the one providing all the damage on that pull, Windwalker is probably the one providing the AoE stun, the single target interrupts that you require on the AoE fear and on other casts. And just losing one player is such a big problem for them, and they just didn't manage to finish out that pull. They also don't have a class that has a normal battle rest, so they would have to use engineering rest, which just takes quite a bit longer. First, you have to walk to the body, you have to cast the engineering rest, and it's just not the time they have for these huge pulls. But Echo, on the other hand, having a perfect run, 0 deaths so far. Very, very nice for them to recover after losing this very close first game in Halls. So really good for them to be able to just have such a clean run here in this Necrotic Wake. And it looks like they're about to finish off Amarth as well. And after Amarth, there's going to be another really, really dangerous pull in the Necropolis, where they're just going to be pulling everything on top of each other. Can be incredibly dangerous too. So still a lot of things left to do for them.
Yeah, as much as they are really far ahead right now, they do not have an easy task ahead of them. This Necropolis pull that they are about to get involved with is so dangerous. We've seen it cause so many different problems for so many teams, but Echo have executed it so cleanly before. I think that they can do it, but this is where the dungeon is going to be won or lost, because if they end up having problems in this Necropolis pull, it will absolutely let Perplexed get their foot back in the door. Perplexed are getting started on Amarth. They're at that 68% trash count as well. So one boss ahead. Echo, despite so much going wrong for Perplexed are really trying to get back into this. One boss and 45 seconds of death differential ahead, as now we'll be sending out that cage on a Corpse Collector, grabbing basically the entire rest of the room all at once. Frag in position now to come in with that stealth, with that 100% crit from the Master Assassin Legendary, combining with that powerful weapon, and you can see these mobs are just getting melted by that weapon. Frag at 250,000 DPS. All those Spiteful Shades now spawned as well. They are going to do a beautiful job of kiting that. Wow, they've made this look so
nice.
Good. So impressive, as they are now going to be breaking out that Fleshcrafter, landing the Cleaver on the Pride for a little bit of extra damage. You can see the Pride gets chunked there by that Cleaver, and they are bringing that Fleshcrafter in, and this is artwork from Echo.
Yeah, that's actually incredible. That's why they also left the Fleshcrafter CC'd there in the corner. They pulled everything except the Fleshcrafter and this Collector, because the Fleshcrafter is throwing the cleavers that helps him out with that Pride, and also having the second Collector here as well. So everything is planned here, and just huge amount of damage, of course, coming out of that weapon, and perfect execution. So now, once they finish this off, they're going to be dealing with the boss. We will see what they do with the last Pride. We've seen some teams decided to skip the Pride, but then play it for the last boss. I do believe that's what Echo tried to do last time as well. So they just spawn the Pride in a corner after the last trash bags they have to do. Then they don't actually kill it for this boss, but then once this boss is dead, they kill the Pride so they can finish off the last boss faster. So we'll see if they change their minds, or if that's still the plan that they're going to be doing. As Perplexed now downed their boss, and they're going to be doing this very same pull in the Necropolis as well.
Yeah, Perplexed, if they want to have a hope of catching back up here, they really need to make sure that this pull works out well for them as well. But Echo at this point are so far ahead that if everything goes according to plan for Echo, there's no way Perplexed are going to be able to get back in here. It's going to be all about these boss fights. Absolutely, that skip of the Pride, that is one of the big ways that things could go really wrong for Echo. If they try and fail to skip the Pride and get it coming into a boss fight at an inopportune time, that's the sort of thing that can cause things to go really wrong. So they're going to try to do their best to avoid that. like you said, maybe spawn it in the corner and then skip it initially, kill it after this boss, and then take that Pride with Lust into the very last boss of the dungeon. We've seen a couple teams have different ideas as well. Some teams instead like to pull the Pride once it's about 50% health into this next boss and then use the Lust and kill this boss really quickly. Perplexed, their big pull has gone a little bit less well. A Shine ended up going down there. They've got him actually released, so he's just going to be flying back up. Divine is under a lot of pressure as well. This pull is working out okay for Perplexed, but they have a lot of mobs spread out across the room, and they spawn their Pride while Divine is still under a lot of pressure. It looks like that pull is going to work out for them, but they're going to lose a little bit of time on it. It's okay. They're still in range if things go really wrong for Echo to maybe clean this one back up, but all eyes remain on Echo here as they are going to get started with their final trash pull of the dungeon. It's this Rot Spew pack, the last pack of the gauntlet, and then it'll be 2 bosses and a Pride that separate them from evening up the series.
Yeah, so this Rat Spree can be pretty dangerous for the tank, but also for the other players as he's throwing these pools onto them, and they can actually not be dodged. At least the initial damage cannot be dodged. So that's a lot of damage coming out on the players. It looks like they're also trying to spawn the pools in this area and then move away afterwards to be able to spawn that Pride. Now, we've seen teams already make mistakes on this boss though, because they are not committing the Bloodlust or the Pride for this boss. It actually takes a little while longer. So what the teams are actually doing is they don't finish off that first Stitchwork mob, and they just wait until the third hook comes out to get the boss back down immediately after he jumps back up. So that's usually causing some issues, because then all of a sudden you have 2 of those mobs up, you have 2 creations up at the same time. Not only do the creations do a lot of damage to the tank, which can be very dangerous, but they also block your hooks, right? So you're trying to hit the boss with the hook to get him back down, but if a creation is standing in the wrong spot, or the Pride mob is standing in the wrong spot, then it could be hooking that instead. So that's really, really important that you have the perfect positioning here from those mobs to be able to hit the hooks perfectly.
So here we go. Echo are taking this Pride into this boss, and look at Zalia's mana. He is so low on mana. They need to get this Manifestation of Pride dead before their group dies. They have a little bit of cast left from Zalia before they're going to be in too much trouble here. Power Infusion is going to come out, and they are fine now. They've got that Pride buff. Zalia's mana is vibing. They are going to just work on killing this boss, land this next hook to stop this Morbid Fixation, and then maybe kill the boss even before the third hook. Otherwise, they'll be able to just send it directly at where he will retreat if they can land that. It's a little bit of a tight hitbox. You do need to aim it very carefully, but it looks like Echo are not going to even really need to bother with that. Maybe they are. Frag is standing in position. Oh, no, but he's standing. Okay, so they killed it before he jumped back up. Incredible damage from Echo. They are actually going to get to take this Prideful buff onto the last boss for the pull of the last boss as well. The damage that they have put out here has been incredible. Look at what Miraz has done on that Windwalker Monk. 14k DPS on that boss. Completely ridiculous, as they are now getting started on the last boss here, and Frag is going to fire off one of those hammers. Somehow he found a way to save a hammer for this boss, and you can see that just instantly does 250,000 damage to the last boss. Bang. It's already now at sub 70% as their Pride is just wearing off, and they will have to do the rest of this boss without any big cooldowns, but look at how great this run has been for Echo. 0 deaths, 0 battle reses, of course, needed to be used. No pulls really going wrong in any meaningful way. Things have looked beautiful, not just the start of the dungeon, but the middle and the Necropolis pull all have looked so good. And to top it off, their single target damage has just been incredible as well. This dungeon run is going to be so fast from them. They won their last game on this map in 14 minutes and 30 seconds, and they are looking to shave something like a minute off of that time here against Perplexed. They have come to play.
Yeah, this is actually an incredible run by Echo, and you also see how they're basically avoiding the Exile cast as well by this boss. First it went on Fragments, he used his Shadow Melt to basically just interrupt the cast completely. Then it went on Gingy. Gingy just used the Ice Block to immune the Exile, and therefore they can stay on this platform and continue DPSing the boss. So very, very well use of basically just mechanics that they have. And you can see another Shadow Melt coming out of Maris here, just being able to avoid this mechanic by basically feign deathing almost. And the boss goes down, and it's gonna be a 1-1 between Echo and Perplexed going into the third game. Wow.
That's right, Echo taking that victory, bouncing back here in Necrotic Wake. And, you know, we were talking a little bit before about some of the dungeons that some of these teams were having the struggles with as well, Zyro, and struggles continue for Perplexed and Necrotic Wake here.
I mean, we were also saying literally right before the match, if you screw up your pull once, that's going to be it. We'll see you next match. And hey, that's exactly what happened here. But I want to focus on Echo.
So good
here.
at guessing.
Like that, we were already impressed with their 14:27 run earlier in the weekend, and that was what 13:40. So they managed to shave like almost another minute off their time. They are, I guess, they're not going anywhere. I mean, these guys are nuts too.
They're crazy hungry for that victory there, and shows how much they're trying to buckle down and fix some of the dungeons they had problems with, but also just improve on the ones, doubling down on those dungeons that they know that they were already fantastic at and trying to make it even more ridiculously quick. So I believe that's also going to mean we have a time trial dungeon in DOS following that, Dreadnoughts, right?
That is indeed the case. The other side is our final dungeon of this series, and I couldn't have picked a better dungeon to be the tiebreaker between these two teams in the upper finals. This is one where their time trial times are less than 10 seconds apart. And we've seen this dungeon look so good from so many different teams with those innovations about directions to go, fighting trash with the last boss. It's so cool to see this. I cannot wait to see what these teams have in store for us in the other side.
Most definitely. And Zyro, what was going on with that wipe on the side of Perplexed? What was like just the catalyst for everything to just sink their ship?
Yeah, so just like looking in at this wipe here for Perplexed here, it looked like, well, this isn't the right clip. I don't think this is them running back from their original wipe, but it looks like what happened in that original wipe is that Swagfist just went down instantly. Like he rolls in, then instantly gets cleaved, and it looks like Divinefield was kind of relying on the leg sweep plus Ring of Peace combo from Swagfist in order to live through that pull. And without that available, he had to try to kite it out, but it was just too late for them, and ended up resulting in the wipe and then more deaths afterwards for them.
Yeah, and we've seen how important it is for all of the supporting cast to kind of just be on hand, and also seen just kind of a number of times over the course of MDI as well, Nagar. I remember even just like Vault of the Wardens having just the AoE stuns come in really quickly so the tank could survive, so they could actually get everything together, and just having one person die just messing up everything.
Yeah, I mean, all of these insanely big pulls are choreographed, basically. Like, you know exactly when each utility is being used, when each defensive and offensive cooldown is being used, and when one single thing goes wrong, everything falls apart. If you're missing an AoE stun, you miss an interrupt, you miss some damage, all of a sudden everything goes wrong, and you just cannot finish the pull. And I think that's what happened there when Swagfist went down. Just everything fell apart. They couldn't finish the pull, and it's just so crucial to not have those mistakes in this dungeon specifically because of those weapons that you lose out on. Because all of those pulls are based around the weapons. So if you use weapons on a pull and you don't manage to finish it, then it's just a huge disaster, and that's why they lost so much time there.
Yeah, most definitely. And now we're going to be looking and kind of setting our sights more onto the other side. As you had mentioned before, Dranos, really close time trials between both Echo and Perplex. They have, 11-second difference? Actually, no, I'm terrible at math. 8-second difference in between their time trial runs.
Yeah, more or less the same thing. A couple seconds separating these two teams. Definitely at the range where I expect that both teams will probably think that they can improve on their time trial times, given what we've seen so far from these teams. And every single game from these guys, there's just always a run that is even better than we thought was the best run that they could do. So even though the time trial times for these teams are 22:30, 22:40 in that range, I expect that we're going to see them try and crest that 22-minute mark, get down to that 21, the 20, somewhere in that insane range for speed, finding ways to shave a little bit more time off if things go well. On the other hand, this is also a matchup that's so close where we might be in the range where like one death could be the difference. That was kind of what happened in Halls of Atonement. That one death early, the one pull going slightly wrong, that was all that Perplex needed to take that game. And we could definitely be in that situation again in the other side.
Yeah, and we've seen a couple times where DOS has caused, just this very slight difference between some of the teams, and also seen a lot of improvement from other teams in DOS as well. I mean, Golden Guardians, for example, Zyro shaved off an extra minute in their runs earlier in the bracket here, so like there's still continuously tons of improvement for these dungeons these teams are working on.
Yeah, for sure. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't actually seen either of the teams actually do this dungeon this weekend yet. So yeah. They've definitely had time to iterate on and work on their strategies from time trials as well. Maybe, pull in some strategies that they saw some other teams pulling off here too. Yeah, like, good example, like you just mentioned, Golden Guardians shaved off a minute off the time trial time in a clean run. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see that happen for either Echo or Perplexed here.
Yeah, it's worth noting that this is a tyrannical dungeon, so the time trials were run when tyrannical was 40% more health on the bosses, and now, in addition to that being nerfed to 30%, there have also been a couple of mobs changed here, slightly nerfed in a couple ways, so we might see some slightly different strategies even than what these teams employed back when the tyrannical was a larger number in the time trials.
Oh, we'll see what these teams have in store for us there. I didn't even know there was that portrait. That was kind of cool on the other side. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Anyway, Echo Perplexed tied up right now in our upper finals, ready to roll here in the other side.
All right, so it's already interesting to see that Echo is going left, Perplexed is going right. So you can see that they already have two different strategies coming into this dungeon. And this is a time trial dungeon, as we talked about, but neither of those teams have actually played this dungeon on tournament. So that means Echo doesn't know what Perplexed is doing in this dungeon, and Perplexed also doesn't know what Echo is doing here. So we'll see what those teams have in store for us as they completely start off the dungeon in two different directions.
Yeah, this is going to be so incredible because of the fact that these teams have such fundamentally different strategies. It means that we're going to have to see just when they get to that last boss which one was faster, and we'll make some guesses until then. But it's really going to be hard to tell which team is ahead, as Echo have already finished off their first pull, but they've committed one of those Night Fae urns to stunning and doing a bit of damage to all of it as they now walk through and get into the Ardenwold Wing. This is what every other team we've seen this weekend do in this dungeon. Perplexed, on the other hand, using a similar strategy to last weekend, and it's not like they didn't know that the left-hand side was an option. They've seen all the other teams that have been doing it. They've seen all of the fast runs, so they must think that they have something better, something that we haven't seen with this right-hand side pathing. As you can see, a massive pull coming out in the Hakar wing for them. They've got to watch out for those explosives. They are going to fire off their Night Fae, and there it goes with that big explosion and stun for 10 seconds on all these mobs, all the AoE damage now being deployed, and they are going to try and burst this stuff down before it becomes too much of a problem. A lot of important interrupts in this pack. They do have a Sigil of Silence available, well, actually not available right now, but that they have some abilities that they can use as AoE stops, but a lot of these mobs are actually CC immune, and with the Raging active, they are doing a really good job of managing those interrupts. They've spawned their 20% Pride. Echo on a big pull in the Ardenwold Wing, also on their 20% Pride.
Yeah, so that looks like Perplexed is killing off that Pride to use it on Hakar. Hakar, definitely a boss that you want to have a lot of damage on to be able to reduce the amount of blood barriers the boss is casting, because that will just prolong the fight even more. So that's why they actually choose to deal with this Pride, as they even carried into the room slowly but surely in between those debuffs coming out. And Echo as well dealing with their Pride on their side. That means they're going to be using their Pride for a huge trash pull. Now, if you look at the affixes, it is tyrannical, so the trash doesn't actually have more HP, but you have Raging, so that is really something they have to be careful about, especially when they do those huge pulls, because the tank is already taking a lot of damage from these mobs, and then when they're Raging all at the same time, you're gonna have to use that AoE to see, you're gonna need to use the Ring of Peace to be able to kite it out. So that's why they also use the urn, of course, to stun it all. And once they're enraging, they really want to make sure they're just getting out of there.
Yeah, now Perplexed are going to get to deploy their Bloodlust here. At just 2 minutes and 50 seconds, they get to fire off their Bloodlust. It's not actually going to get them an extra Bloodlust in this dungeon, right? Because this dungeon is 22, 23 minutes long, unless you can use your first Bloodlust in the first minute of the dungeon, you're only getting 2 in this place. So they are going to choose their first one to go on Hakar. Presumably Echo are going to be using theirs. Actually, I bet both teams are going to be using theirs on Hakar and on Dealer Zyxa. It's just a question of sequencing. Echo are going to Bloodlust later, but it's not going to matter. They should still both be able to get those 2 Bloodlust, as Perplexed really working on this Tyrannical Hakar. This boss is a really important one to just do as much damage as you can to, because if you get these extra Blood Barrier casts later in the fight, they get larger and larger as there are more ads up to be hit by it. Perplexed are actually doing a good job of managing those ads and keeping them dead during the Blood Barrier cast, and that's going to allow them to kill Hakar very quickly. So they're now getting out of there. Divine gets the leap off before the Draw Mojo cast starts for a little bit of extra distance. So they're going to walk back through this Hakar wing pretty successfully. Echo, on the other hand, spawning their 40% Pride. So some teams we've seen do 60% in the Ardenwold wing when they've gone this way. Echo are instead just going to get to that 40% and then go straight into boss. So they're not going to be skipping as much as those teams that spawn the 60% Pride do later in the dungeon.
All right, so it looks like Echo is, as is mentioned, dealing with that second pride for that boss as well. Bosses are pretty difficult in this dungeon on Tyrannical, especially the boss here in the Night Fae wing that you have to deal with because of that lightning that jumps around that just does increasing damage with that debuff that it stacks up with the person that has the lightning on them. So you want to make sure you manage that properly to make sure it doesn't jump onto the same person back and forth. Divine just barely making it a jump. Well done as he's pulling back. Looks like he was pulling the Raptors. He's going to be pulling those on top of the Enraged Spirit. I like that. So just like a little bit of extra just cleave damage. Of course, the Enraged Spirit needs to be focused, but it is raging, and they cannot get the Enraged Spirit into the raging because they can't dispel it, right? So they just choose to have the soldiers here, the Raptors, on top, so they can just cleave them down once they finish off the Spirit here before the second Rage cast comes out.
Yeah, very, very well done by Perplexed. That was so scary watching him float through the air before we saw that he was going to indeed land. Looked like he might have fallen off, but obviously that was part of the plan all along. Very cool plan from Perplexed. Getting them done with 2 difficult trash bowls at the same time. Echo are just going to leave that Enraged Spirit, and they're just going to try and avoid it during the last boss fight. But Perplexed have found a good way to kill it and make use of that Night Fae urn. They are now into the Mechagon wing. Echo's still working on the dealer, but they've done some more trash relative to where Perplexed are. Perplexed are doing a massive pull, though. They are going to do this the second dental drill. Actually, they might be skipping. They are, it looks like. They are skipping all of this trash. So there come those melds. Maybe they're going to get some of that trash after boss, but for right now, they are going to be doing double lubricator and triple lubricator even perhaps. And triple oil. So a lot of interrupts are going to need to be used here on the side of Perplexed. They are going to fire off the Sigil of Silence. That's something to look for. Here it comes. And those mobs are now silenced for the next 8 seconds. That should be enough to let them do most of the damage. Once that is done, they might be using AoE stuns. So there's the Ring of Peace. And then they have a couple more casts, and it's going to be individual stuns, and they've killed the mobs before they do so much. That pull is on such a tight timer because there are 6 mobs that start spam casting at you. Once you're out of AoE ways to stop them, you're going to lose the single target stops very, very, very quickly.
So Echo just downed that first boss for them on their side as well. And we saw Zalia just standing on that ledge. That's something we've seen for the first time by, I believe it was J.B that did it for Golden Guardians. Because your priest never actually has to be melee range to the boss, because all of the casts can be casted on range. You just stand on top of the ledge and you never have to jump up. Because of the AoE, because of the Z-axis, it just doesn't hit you when you stand up there, and it's a little bit of a damage gain because you just don't have to jump up, which is really, really nice to see that Echo is just adapting this tiny little trick that we have seen from other priests before. And now we do see Perplexed dealing with that second boss. So this is really, really hard for us to know which team is actually ahead at this point because they chose completely different routes. So at this point, it looks like Perplexed is ahead because they're already fighting that second boss. But if you look at the trash difference, Echo, of course, dealing with that Night Fae area first, had to deal with a lot more trash. So definitely a difference in trash percentage as well. And the other wings just are a little bit faster compared to the Night Fae area because you just choose to skip more trash there.
Yeah, there's also some really long empty runs in this dungeon, these times where you're just walking for a minute, and they are mostly in that Night Fae area, getting to and getting from the Night Fae area. Echo has already done both of those moves. Perplex still has both of them in their future, so that is going to be another thing that will probably even the scales a bit. I would have to say, though, yeah, it does seem, Perplexed obviously working on their second boss, whereas Echo have just started their second wing. I do think Perplexed are slightly ahead. Maybe, there's just no way. The only time we'll be able to compare is when they pull the last boss. That is going to be the only time that they have all the same stuff pulled in this dungeon. This is so cool to see these teams with such different ideas about how to do the other side best. There's the stun landed on the Mana Storm. That's an important thing about this fight is you get those stuns from the inactive Mana Storm that you can use to stop those dangerous casts from the active one. Now we've got Millhouse back down, and they're going to deal with Millhouse and then finish off Maleficent. They've done a lot of damage to Maleficent, actually. 30% when she's gone back up is a pretty impressive amount of damage that's been deployed here by Perplexed. Wolf Disco there on that Fire Mage. A Limit Raider as well, so a little bit of a rivalry between, of course, the Limit Raider, only the one Limit Raider on the team of Perplexed, against the 5 Echo Raiders on Echo, including Fragments, who's just gone down. They are going to battle res him, but now is dropping really low. He's going to be okay. They are going to be able to keep him alive. That's going to cost Echo a little bit, but not too much. The main resource it's cost them is that battle res, and of course the 5 seconds, but it's not the end of the world. It's not like they had any pull go horrifically wrong for them. So they are okay here. They're recovered from that.
Okay, that was actually so well recovered by them, because what happened there was that one of the trash mobs was on very, very low HP when Fragments went down, because it was raging, and the AoE, I believe, killed Fragments. And instead of finishing off the mob, they decided to rest Fragments first, because once they finish off the mob, the Pride mob spawns, and they have to immediately use the invisibility potion to be able to skip it. Because if one of your team, if your group members gets in combat with the Pride, you're not going to be able to skip it anymore. So instead of finishing the mob off, they just rest, then finished off the mob, and then used the Invis Potion. So very well recovered from that one death on Echo side, as they're now moving on to the same boss that Perplexed just killed. So Perplexed is now moving on to this Night Fae area, and they're going to be doing very similar pulls to what we've seen by Echo before. Let's see if they can do it as cleanly as we've seen Echo do it, and let's see if Echo can do this boss as cleanly as Perplexed just did it before.
Yeah, Perplexed have 30% more trash that they need to kill than Echo, whereas Echo have an extra boss that they've just started on. It's so hard to see who is favored here. I mean, 30% is a lot of trash, but Echo also have to move all the way over to that Mecha, or the Hakar wing, whereas Perplexed have already done a lot of that empty movement now. They just have a little bit left ahead of them, so, I mean, this is going to be so close. I wonder if those 5 seconds of that death are going to matter as well. The fact that pull went slightly wrong for them. We saw in the Halls of Atonement in Game 1 of this series that a pull going slightly wrong was enough to make a difference between these two teams. If their two paths are close enough together, theoretically, that could easily mean the same thing could be true in this dungeon.
Definitely, and that was a pretty insane pull that Perplexed just pulled off.
Wow!
As they were pulling the Enraged Spirit on top of the trash pack, and then they had the Pride mob spawn in between, while you saw the raging mobs just casting onto Divine Field. So that was actually crazy to be able to pull this off. As they're now having to deal with this Pride mob, looks like they have to commit quite a few defensives here.
Yeah,
to be able to
Bryson
survive.
went down. They were able to get the battle res on him, but they've lost one of their battle reses now, and the 5 seconds are evened out. Ryson is doing okay on mana, but he just needs to find the throughput here. Does manage to barely do it at 10% HP, and they are all going to be okay as they move on towards that Night Fae wing. So yeah, that pull went slightly wrong for them, but it was a very ambitious pull, like you said. All of those mobs together really made possible by that Night Fae urn. The big AoE stun for 10 seconds, letting you just unload your damage, even though there's a lot of mechanics going off. Meanwhile, on the side of Echo, they are working still on this boss. This is a very long boss fight. 2 bosses, and you can see they've only got Maleficent to 48% when she's jumped back up. Perplexed got her all the way to 30% at this same point in the fight, whereas Echo have deployed a little bit more damage onto Millhouse in the first phase. Not a huge difference. I guess it's probably just a difference in when their cooldowns came up.
So one difference to notice, Perplexed actually does have the Pride buff now for this first pull. That's something that Echo did not have, because they walked immediately into this area not having a Pride buff at all. So this pull is going to be a little bit easier for Perplexed. Maybe they gathered even more trash on their first pull than maybe Echo did because of this Pride, making it possible for them to just have more damage and finish off more of this trash. As you can see, it's just melting. Ashine going down though, unfortunately, as he probably ripped some aggro there at the very end with the huge amount of damage that was coming out of that Unholy DK. They do need to use a battle rest. There we go. Their last battle rest actually coming out here to get a shine back up for that manifestation of Pride. It is their 3rd manifestation, and you can see with the trash difference now, it's actually getting closer and closer at this point, as Echo now finished the boss, and now they're up at the same bosses, both of them 2 out of 4 bosses, and both of them very similar in trash percentage as well.
Yeah, this is so close. 6% trash count difference between these two teams. Both teams will have now killed the same number of prides as well. 5 extra seconds in favor of Echo now. Perplexed were having a cleaner run, but in the last couple minutes, they've had those 2 deaths. They are getting sorted for another massive pull here. They are going to be pulling more trash in this Night Fae area, and they're going to pull all of this onto this urn. You can see even that dragon is coming in. They have got so much trash. Wolf Disco now activating that Night Fae urn. They have to get that cast off, and there it is. All these mobs are now stunned, and they are just going to be unloading their damage here. A Shine just blasting, Wolf Disco blasting, Divine blasting as well on that Vengeance Demon Hunter as they've gotten that stun over. Some of these mobs are enraged. You can see Divine has no interest in standing anywhere near those 20 enraged mobs. He is going to kite in a tight circle. You can see the way he's kiting in a circle to try and keep the mobs inside that flame patch, inside that death and decay as much as possible. And now with most of those mobs dead, he's willing to come back in and take a couple of auto attacks from the few remaining stragglers. They're going to run away from that dragon, haven't killed it, and that is a nice bit of trash count for them. They are up to 78% count. Echo still working on a trash pull that will actually get them to a pretty similar percentage. I think, in fact, Echo, Mira's at 1% HP, somehow is alive, just has the perfect amount of health to live a brutal combination of abilities, and I think auto attacks from the Fixate guys maybe on him there. He's okay though. Yeah, he's lived. Echo are at 76%. They're going to be doing their Pride spawning 80% pull now onto this urn. This will get them actually to 85%, I think. Whereas Perplexed, Divine drops really low. It's going to pop him into meta. I think that might have been his last resort as well. It's still dropping really low, even inside his last resort meta. A lot of mobs here in Rage, and Divine is now backing away slowly, making sure those are not going to connect with him. But they've spawned their next Pride now. They need to finish off all these mobs so Divine can get in there and start tanking that Pride, because they also are going to need to kill that Pride. The saving grace here for Perplexed is that Ryson is doing great on mana. He's got a full mana bar here, so once they've killed off the mobs that are in danger of killing Divine, he will have more than enough resources to keep the group alive through the heavy damage of this Pride. Once they kill off this Pride, they will be going straight into the dealer boss here. This will be their last Bloodlust of the dungeon, which they will combine with that Pride buff to try and melt the boss as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Echo are also working on their 80% Pride. They will be taking this Pride into Hakar with their second Bloodlust of the dungeon. So these two teams are neck and neck right now.
Yeah, this is so incredibly close between those two teams. You do see a little bit more trash missing for Echo, so that means they're gonna have to do another trash pull in that middle area where the last boss is, compared to Perplexed, who has already done that trash pull before. So it really looks like Perplexed is slightly ahead at this point because they're already engaging that boss now. We'll see how many offensive cooldowns they want to commit to this boss. Both of them do have Bloodlust available, so we'll see what they're going to be using it for.
Oh.
We did see Perplexed use the Bloodlust for Hakar, so it's very possible that they're going to be using it for that as well. As they pull some more trash on top of the boss here, which is very smart, because they're just going to be passively cleaving them down. Those Mindbenders and the Barkbinders, they don't do much. There's really not a huge problem for them to deal with it. Divine Field is going to be totally fine to off-tank them, so they're just going to be passively cleaved, and it's incredibly efficient percentage to get when you're just fighting the boss anyway for a long time. As Echo is now on Hakar, the Bloodlust is being popped by both of the teams, just making sure they get the most single target damage. And you can see the boss is dropping a little bit faster for Echo, but Hakar has the Blood Barrier, so they have to chew through that as well.
Yeah, that cast coming out just a moment for Echo as, Perplexed have found a really great way to sneak an extra 2 percentage points here. It's actually a single target damage increase as well for a couple of their players to have a little bit of trash on top of the boss. And they've managed to exploit that to really just nuke Dealer down here. Dealer has a lot of health. Echo have finished off Hakar though. Echo do have one extra trash pull relative to Perplexed that they are going to need to go and do. But Perplexed has a little bit of a longer run back. It takes a little bit more time to get back from the Night Fae area to the central ring than it does from the Hakar area. So you can see Echo are really quickly zipping through that segment of the dungeon. Perplexed are working on this last couple percentage points of Dealer, and then they'll be mounting up and similarly heading on their way back towards that central ring, and they will be getting ready to pull Muezala. The question here for me is going to be, how soon will Echo take this trash pull into the boss? We've seen teams pulling the end of this trash pull into Muezala. The question is whether Echo thinks they can do that early, because I think it's going to be about which of these teams pulls the boss first. That is going to be a crucial factor here, as Echo are now getting started on this trash pull. Tyrannical active and not fortified, so the trash pull shouldn't take too long. Perplexed are also going to be running back towards that central ring, but they have this entire gauntlet hallway to run through. A Shine using his Door of Shadows, Wolf Disco using his Soul Shape so that they can get through this hallway just a little bit faster. Once they get to the end of this hallway, all they have to do is pull the boss, and they will be getting started on this boss encounter. Echo, meanwhile, dealing with the last of this trash pull. They are just going to kill the entire trash pull before pulling the boss. So Perplexed are going to be getting started on this boss right around the same time.
They still have the Enraged Spirit on Echo's side. So Perplexed actually pulled the Enraged Spirit onto this trash pack that Echo is now dealing with, but Echo still has an Enraged Spirit walking around there.
Yeah.
hopefully they can skip it, because of course you need to go onto those platforms in the intermission phase. So we'll see if that's gonna work out for them, as it's still walking around there. But yeah, as you can see with the trash, they're up to 92% both teams. If you look at the deaths, 2 deaths for Perplexed, 1 death for Echo. So 5 seconds advantage for Echo, and they also pulled the boss at approximately the same time. I mean, look at the boss's HP. Both 98%. Perplexed slightly managed to get the boss a little bit lower, and it also will depend on how quickly they can cleave off of the boss. Because they're going to be pulling trash on top of the boss after they come back from the intermission phase. So they're going to be using that haste buff they're going to gain to be able to finish off that trash. Now, the faster they can, or the more they can cleave off of the boss, the better it's going to be for them. Because once the boss dies, they can finish off the trash, because they don't want to spawn the Pride mid-boss fight. So more single target damage is gonna matter. And Shatter Reality now starting for both teams, as they're gonna be jumping to those platforms, finishing off that mirror image. And that's just incredible how close those 2 teams are. Wow.
Oh my goodness, this is going to be so sketch as well for Echo, because like you mentioned, there is still that patrolling spirit, probably on Gingy's platform, that he really needs to be careful to dodge. On the side of Perplexed, that thing is dead, and so you can see Wolf Disco is just able to take care of this Visage without having to worry about avoiding that. You can see Gingy has had to commit an ice block, it looks like, at some point, so perhaps needing to use that to avoid dying to the Enraged Spirit, as they are now going to get through these Visages, hopefully killing all 4 on both teams, as Perplexed are now getting to this front platform. And there come all the Bwansambies. Hopefully they've gotten all 4. Yeah, is it all 4 or is it just 3? Let's see. Let's see how much damage.
I think there was 1 still up.
I saw one as well near the end as well. Let's see how much damage they got onto myself. Oh no! Okay, no, they got all 4. They got all 4. Both teams with all 4. It's not for Echo.
Missed one.
Echo missed. Okay, so it must have been Gingy's with that Enraged Spirit. That must be what's happened there, because he did have to ice block. He had that hypothermia debuff on him at least. Although I see it looks like his ice block is still available. So yeah, this is disastrous for Echo, because Perplexed now can just focus down this boss. Once this boss dies, they will get a little bit more trash they still need before they can finish this dungeon. It's at the top of the stairs right now. They've maybe already pulled it and crowd control it, or maybe they will just pull it afterwards here. But once they do this, their boss is so much lower. Echo have to do another Shattered Reality phase. And even though they only have the 1 image to go and kill, they are going to have to wait for the entire cast to end before they can get back to this platform. And they've had less haste now as well than Perplexed. Perplexed at 12% on Moizala. Moizala dies at 10%, and they are at 97% count. You can see they brought in those last 2 mobs down here to the very front. And this is so brutal what's happened here for Echo. The Echo is bringing in their 100% count as well. But this is not going to be enough, because they didn't manage to kill all 4 of those images. That's going to be the difference here, because Perplexed, even with those extra deaths on the board, their boss is almost dead. Divine is almost dead too, though. Divine needs to be able to stay alive here. Both of his cheat deaths have been exhausted. He doesn't have meta available. If his health reaches 0, he will die. But he's been okay. They've gotten through the boss fight. They just have to kill this last trash pat mob, and there they've done it. Perplexed have taken the upper finals here against Echo 2-1.
Wow, Perplexed bouncing back here in the other side. They're taking that victory. And, you know, right now, it's so crazy to look at how much these teams have been just battling against each other and trying to set the pace, trying to set the bar for all the other teams to sort of fall under. And Perplexed, once again, winning the upper finals, moving on to the finals. And they got some time to rest and prepare here, Zyro.
Yeah, I mean, we really can't downplay what a massive advantage it is for them to take the upper finals here. They get to go practice the next 3 maps for the grand finals later on today, and Echo's going to have to slum it out in the lower finals here, and then hopefully they have enough time to practice both the lower finals and the upper finals if they plan on putting up a good fight. That's kind of rough for Echo there. There was such a close match the entire way through, and then just not being able to kill off that final totem pretty much spelled the end for them.